here to do the impossible. We are going to rank every Legend of Zelda game in the whole franchise and definitively say what is the best, what is the worst, and everything in between. I have played them all. Every one of them to the very end. Not recently. It's been a while. It's going to be easy to do the top and the bottom for me, but it's that bit in the middle that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. I'm going to start with my absolute favourite Zelda game of all time. It's my number 2 favourite game in history, Twilight Princess HD. That is my favourite Zelda game and my second favourite game of all time, only beaten by Smash Brothers. And I constantly argue backwards and forwards about which one's top, Smash Brothers Ultimate or this game. What a good choice. Thank you, Master of Blades. Right, so let's justify why I think Legend of Zelda HD is my favourite. I think everything that everybody loves about Zelda is in that game. I think it's amazingly well paced. I think the characters are really well done. I think the overworld is not too big, but also not too small. I think all the dungeons are absolutely phenomenal. And I think all the items you pick up and everything were brilliant. The HD version tackles a lot of, tackles all of the problems I had before. So Twilight Princess, when I first played it, only had a handful of problems, and I'm going to struggle to remember what they are because HD has replaced them all. But I used to have an issue with every chest that you opened. There was loads of chests in this game. Every chest you opened had a rupee in it. And it was so annoying, especially because there was very little to spend your money on. So you'd go into a dungeon, adamant that you're going to wipe your dungeon clean, take everything out of it, and you'd open a chest and you get a rupee. Link's wallet is filled and he'll have to put the rupee back, and that chest stays on the map. That was so annoying. However, in HD, not only did they give you more to spend your money on, they also put more in the chests and spread the chests out, so it wasn't so much of a problem when you were opening chests and they expanded your wallet and things, so it was a lot better. My other problem with the original Twilight Princess was the difficulty. It was too easy. And where is he? Let's get him. When HD came out, you not only had a harder mode, but you also had this guy. Rip. Can you see that? There we go. If you use this amiibo on Twilight Princess HD, it doubles all the damage you take in the game. So any complaint I had about the game being too easy was completely obliterated by the fact that you could just put your Ganondorf amiibo on, you had the harder skill level, and the game was just brilliant for anybody who wanted that challenge. So loved that. I understand a lot of people's complaints were there wasn't a lot to do with the wolf. I get that, fair enough. For me, it was good enough. But with this amiibo, you not only had you could bring your wolf over to Breath of the Wild, which was great, and I used it all the time, but it also gave you this extra dungeon to sort of save, and you could only do as the wolf, so there was more reason to play as the wolf. Almost the perfect game for me is Twilight Princess. Xenoblade is third. Yes, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is probably, yes, I would say that's my third game. Love Twilight Princess, and I'll keep... this will be my measuring stick. I will always come back to Twilight Princess as we go through the other ones to explain not only why it's better, in my opinion, but also why the other ones rank where they rank. Even that bridge battle in Twilight Princess. Oh, and that bit where you have to storm the... castle of all the moblins, and it's raining, and you have to go around like in this kind of battle thing, and they're shooting out. Oh, I love Twilight Princess. Anyway, right, moving on. What have we got next? Skyward Sword. And I'm going to put it there for now. And I'm going to go backwards and forwards on this. Skyward Sword could potentially be one of the greatest Zelda games of all time if it wasn't for the aforementioned motion controls. I love this game, and I think a lot of people, in hindsight, forget how good this game is, but it's overshadowed by the bad memories that this game gives you. There is some fantastic dungeons in this, some very unique ideas. There's also the terrible mechanics you have to do to get through these. So, for example, the worst bit that really annoyed me was how you use bombs. Throwing them overarm with motion controls, rolling them, all of that was so annoying because you couldn't play it sitting down. If you had to roll a bomb, you pretty much had to stand up. And these dungeons can take a couple of hours to get done sometimes, especially if it's the first time round. And standing up for that period of time just damaged the game experience for me. But the ideas in there and what you could do were really fun. And I'm hoping that when they release Skyward Sword HD, which I was very excited about when it came out, that they're going to do the same thing they did with Twilight Princess HD. And it'll be very interesting to see how people react now the controls will be changed. Emily, exactly. When Skyward Sword gets remastered, buttons will elevate it. Absolutely. I honestly think there's a lot of stuff that people forgot or didn't even get to because the controls put them off. Plus the fact Skyward Sword was released a lot later in the Wii's life. And a lot of the hardcore Zelda fans, I think, that had moved on from the Wii, they might have gone back and picked them up, you know. But there's a certain amount of Zelda fandom that didn't give Skyward Sword a fair shake because of the fact it was towards the end of the Wii and everyone was fed up with it and those controls. So we'll go through some of my favourite scenes in that in a minute. Vegas, a friend showed me a really cool boss fight and the design philosophy behind it was amazing throughout. It was. And the kind of motion control of how you beat them, like especially Girahim, where Girahim, he did this really creepy walk up to you and he kind of did that as he got closer and closer, and as you slashed your sword, you just caught your sword and you had to try and do it at an angle where he wasn't going to catch it, like stabbing him and stuff like that. That was so good, but the controls just made it awkward. And that the dungeon that stands out to me the most in Skyward Sword is the one with the time-travelling robots. You go to this desert area, and everything's kind of old and withered and everything else and sort of lost to time. But you activate these time crystals that sort of open up a bubble, and you reverse time to when it was fully active in that point where all the technology was still moving and not decayed. That was a great dungeon. That was really, really good. And it also complemented into that big skeleton boss on the ship. Great stuff, great stuff. Imprisoned, thank you, Master of Blades. That boss is awful, and you have to beat it 3 times. That's awful. If they changed that in the HD collection, then, or rather the HD remaster, then that would be the only bit I'd say please do something about that, because that boss was not fun. Not too sure. The revisiting areas was done really well, and I think if the Wii was more powerful, you'd have seen the game being closer to Breath of the Wild. I agree, yes. And I think that the Skyward Sword was a waking up point for Nintendo to basically say, we've done the same formula too many times, and that's why they mixed it up so much in Breath of the Wild. But Skyward Sword is still such a great game. People forget all about the quest to get the Hylian shield and everything you had to do to get that. Because I'll talk about Breath of the Wild later, but they had weapons that broke in this game, but it took a lot longer. They lasted a lot longer, and you could coat your weapons in special stuff to potions to keep them going for ages. And that sort of town that you went to equip yourself and everything that you had, that was really good. And they had all the weapons you could buy and upgrade your shields and all these different versions of it. But you went on a quest to get the Hylian shield, which never broke, which was so important to take on the last boss in the game, which was Ganondorf's ancestor. And again, what a great last boss that was, where I'm not going to spoil it because I know some people haven't played it yet, but oh my god, it's great. It is great. A Link Between Worlds was better than the game it was based upon, but I didn't. Okay, right, we're going to get onto it in a moment, but I didn't like A Link to the Past. I know, right? Because the first Zelda game I ever played was the one on the NES, and for a long time that was it. That was the only one I played. I then skipped a load, Zelda 2 and Link to the Past, and the next game I really played was Ocarina of Time. For me, Ocarina of Time did everything Link to the Past did better, so when I went back to play it, it was kind of, I just didn't enjoy it as much, and it was just frustrating. I didn't like the dungeons, I didn't like a lot of what that game did, and we'll talk about it more when we bring up the game. But Link Between Worlds was a good sequel to that game. It was a lot of fun, it was really good, but because it was more nostalgic for the people who played that game, a lot of it didn't hit home for me, and I didn't really care about the fact you could play it in any order you wanted. I wanted that skill level to go up as I played, so the fact that you could tackle any dungeon in any order, it just meant I was kind of playing the first dungeon skill level over and over again, and I didn't like that. I wanted the game to get harder, not just let me, go anywhere and explore. So I like the game. I think the story's pretty good-ish. I think the dungeons were pretty cool, but it was too easy. It was just over too quickly, and it didn't seem to do anything different that the other Zelda games, regardless of what you think about how the games play, Link Between Worlds, I could have lived without it. If they never released it, I wouldn't have cared. That's why I think it's around there at the moment. Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Where are we going with these? Elephant in the room with Phantom Hourglass. Its biggest problem is revisiting that dungeon over and over again to get lower, isn't it? That's the biggest issue. However, it does have some really cool mechanics. The fact that you can write on the map to say where there's certain secrets and things. The fact that they used a lot of the touch controls, like with the boomerang and things like that. That was really, really cool. But it is one of the worst Zelda games because of that dungeon. It's just not a fun game to play, for the most part. Is Spirit Tracks better than Phantom Hourglass? What do you think? Deadeye says yes. I'm tending to agree with you. But is it better than a D? D is our bottom tier. Spirit Tracks a C. Phantom Hourglass D? Is that where we're going? Spirit is a B, Phantom is a D. Was Spirit Tracks really that good, Deadeye? Okay, I'm going to leave it like that for now, until we put some more games in there. Minish Cap. Right, now we are talking. Minish Cap is one of the greatest 2D Zelda games ever made, and I will fight you on that one. Minish Cap is fantastic. I'll tell you why, because the bosses are fun. The art design is brilliant. The story is great. The dungeons are phenomenal. The world map is that open world Zelda map that they started with in the original Zelda, but it's not as crazy and over the top and difficult to navigate, which I found with Link to the Past, where the map was, you kind of had to go around the map in certain one-way systems sometimes. I never found that with Minish Cap. I also liked the crystals you had. I can't remember what they're called. The coins you had to match up. I thought the companion, the cap, was really funny, and probably next to Midna, maybe the best companion. That is up for debate. But I love the Minish, I love the idea of it, I loved all the different sizes of, shrinking down and going to go into different dungeons and how they used that, how it was raining and then you shrunk and then the rain became harmful to you. Brilliant. Minish Cap is full of great ideas and it is so, so good. For now, the overworld is so claustrophobic and linear, you can't go anywhere you shouldn't go. It's like a dungeon. But, okay, so this is where you'll probably see where my rankings are sort of done. I like linearity in games. I don't like, because I play so many, I don't like getting lost on a map or wandering around, and things like Oblivion and Grand Theft Auto and those kind of stuff. I don't like getting lost on open world sandbox games. I like the game, not to hold my hand, but just sort of guide me on where to go next. And if I choose to go off somewhere random, great, I can. But if I don't want to, and I just want to get to the next part of the story, it's not going to hinder me and say, now guess what? Look at this massive map. guess where you gotta go? And then you go the wrong direction for 2 hours, only to realise, oh, it was right next to me the whole time. I hate that. I hate that. That's why I like Minish Cap over like Link Between Worlds, because I felt Minish Cap told you where you needed to go, but never hid where you needed to go. Is it better than Skyward Sword? Is it better than Skyward Sword? There's a clash of styles, really, isn't it? Nothing in Minish Cap that annoyed me, but there was stuff in Skyward Sword that annoyed me. And as I haven't played the remake yet, I can't take that into consideration. The controls were a big put-off, but there was nothing like that in Minish Cap. But Minish Cap is actually quite short compared to Skyward Sword. But you don't Right, yes. I'm making an executive decision right now! Minish Cap is better than Skyward Sword, because there's nothing that annoyed me in that game. Regardless of the fact it's shorter, there was plenty to do, and it didn't reuse any of its content just to bolster its playtime. So on that merit alone, just because Skyward Sword is longer, it did reuse some of the same bosses and areas. Minish Cap chose not to do that, and it shouldn't be punished as a result. So Minish Cap is better than Skyward Sword. Whew. Four Swords Adventures. I'm just putting it there so you can see it. It's not necessarily going to stay there. Four Swords Adventures on your own, a little tricky, a little awkward, but still fun. And it's, again, if you've played a lot of Zelda games up until that point, there's a lot of callbacks. Dark Link is used very well in this game. The other thing about Minish Cap, why it's so good, Vati is such a great bad guy. Vati should I can't wait until they bring Vati into one of the 3D Zeldas, because as far as, you know, Ganon will always be the best Zelda villain, without the fact that, you know, it is what it is. And there are some great other villains in there, but Vati is, am I confident enough to say he's my second favourite Zelda villain? I'm going to go with it for now until something else comes back into my mind. But Vati is so great, and he again is very good in Four Swords as a boss. So I love Four Swords Adventures because I played it with 3 other friends, each having Game Boy Advances, and we went through the whole game, and it was a blast. And we played it seriously. No burning each other's bums and you know, worrying about the scores and stuff. We played it as a team to get through it. So I love Four Swords Adventures. I do believe it is better than Link Between Worlds, and I probably have unintentionally put it where it deserves to be. Its story is a little weak, and it's a cooperative game above all, and the one player is a bit thing. But it was so awesome when the screen just got filled with enemies, and all your team just sort of went, right, here we go, guys, and there's all 4 of you just battling against hundreds of enemies. It was so cool, so cool. It is based on Link to the Past, but you see, Deadeye, it takes away the parts of Link to the Past I have a problem with, which is generally the overworld map, which it's in here somewhere. I might even pick it up next just to get it out of the way. But Four Swords Adventures, I like going back to what I was saying about linear games. You go from level to level. I didn't need to explore a massive map to go to the next part. The battle system, there's nothing wrong with the battle system in Link to the Past. So it takes all the parts I like in Link to the Past and chucks it in a game and says, yeah, Bill, here's all the bits you didn't like, we're taking it out. You happy now? And yes, I am. Yes, I am happy. Right, Link to the Past. Better than Spirit Tracks. Not better than Link Between Worlds. Better than Phantom Hourglass. Oh, but I did like some bits in Phantom Hourglass. Right, so just to recap, guys, on Link to the Past. I didn't like the overworld map in Link to the Past. I thought it was annoying. I thought you had to traverse it so many times, it really annoyed me. You've got to remember I played Ocarina of Time first and then went back to play Link to the Past. So the story and the music and everything was... I was just buzzing off Ocarina of Time, and then I had to come back to Link to the Past, and it was a downgrade for me. I didn't like the fact that Link had purple hair. That annoyed me as a kid growing up. But I knew why they did it, because they needed a contrast and they didn't have that many colours on the SNES. There's a lot of enemies that just whittle away your life, and that boss, that snake boss, where you just bounced off him and you fall down the hole and then you have to navigate the dungeon again to get back up to take on the boss again, that really annoyed me. He's easy, but does it really need to chuck you out of the dungeon just because he bounced you off? You know, there was annoying parts like that. Turning into a bunny rabbit, why? When you just... I've already told you I don't like the world map. Link to the Past has the same world map twice, but one's in the Dark World, and they mix things up and they make it harder. And when you join that map, you turn into a bunny rabbit. I literally, the first time I played that game, I got to the Dark World, turned into a bunny rabbit, and went, I'm out. I just cannot put up with this. It really annoyed me. I know he turns into a bunny because he's innocent. I know. I get it, but okay, did I try and understand? I played Ocarina of Time, right? Imagine this. You've played Ocarina of Time first. You take the sword out of the pedestal when you're a child, and then you become an adult. The world becomes the Dark World essentially, but now you're an adult. You know, you not unlike Link to the Past, where you've gone from being normal Link to a bunny rabbit. You can't do anything until you find the glass or what is it? I can't remember, some artifact that allows you to keep your normal form. When you change the other world, it's more of a kind of what am I doing? Whereas Ocarina of Time, when you change to the other world, it's like, oh my god, I've grown up. And there was a big cinematic, and you had more combos, and you had more range, and you had different items, and everything sort of built on top of that. Whereas Link to the Past, it was just a story mechanic, and it was just this way of saying these are going to be harder dungeons. It didn't really do anything. It just sort of said this is here, this is a thing. It didn't build it up so much. I know why they did it, but imagine the contrast between the two. You can get the pearl before starting the Dark World. You can, Vagrus. However, I didn't. I'd already played Ocarina of Time, which takes all the best parts of this game and puts it in there, like the hook shot. The first time I used the hook shot was in Ocarina of Time. First time I came to Kakariko Village and heard that music, it was in Ocarina of Time. It just was better, you know, a better experience, and I just felt going back was always a bit of a downgrade, and I think that's why it hurt me. But I do think Link Between Worlds is better, and if you like that game, I think Link Between Worlds is a better game. It's definitely better than Spirit Tracks, and it's better than Phantom Hourglass. I don't know if I played Minish Cap before I played Link to the Past. That's another thing to bear in mind. Yes, so I played Link to the Past, got to the bit where I was a bunny in the Dark World, when I can't play this right now, because I'm just buzzing off some of the other Zeldas. Played Minish Cap, and then went back to finish Link to the Past from the beginning again, with fresh eyes. I think I just played it far too late. I get why people like it, and if you played it younger, then I get it, but playing it now, I just don't think it's as good as what people say it is, in my opinion. Wind Waker. I'm going to replace this, it's not on the list right now, but Wind Waker HD, there it is, right, so get rid of that. Let's put Wind Waker HD up. Wind Waker HD, so I'm marking Wind Waker HD, not the normal Wind Waker. So what's the difference for people that don't know? They sped up the quest for the Triforce pieces by making it not as daunting and less parts to pick up. Obviously they improved the graphics. They made navigation a lot easier. And they have some really great sort of options with the tablet as well, like the dungeon and stuff, so really good. Is it better than Skyward Sword? No. No, I don't think it is. And the reason I don't think it is because it loses its pacing very quickly towards the end. Because basically Wind Waker was wrapping up, and they had, I think, 2 more dungeons that they had ideas for, and they didn't have enough time to put it into the game. And GameCube needed a Zelda game. They've been hyping this up for ages. Lots of people have already been moaning about the way it looked. I never cared. I remember the game came out, I went, oh, that's different. But it never bothered me. The game looked cartoony. I liked the fact it was different. But people were you know, raging. If Twitter was around in those days the way it is now, you know, Nintendo probably would have pulled the plug. I'm glad they didn't. Wind Waker came out, but they had to get it out, so they took out those last 2 dungeons and replaced it with the Triforce quest, where you're sailing around to get all the pieces to put the Triforce together to open the final area. That should have been 2 extra dungeons according to the original plan. those 2 extra dungeons were repurposed and put in Twilight Princess. So another reason I like that game so much, there's 2 extra dungeons in there that weren't originally going to be there. But the game is solid. The battle mechanics and the, you know, with the, although in Twilight Princess they did this, I love the skull guy who teaches you all the moves. Anyway, that's Twilight Princess. Wind Waker has that quick time event dashes, and when you roll around people and hit them with your sword and all of that. Loved the battle system on this game. It just elevated what Ocarina of Time did and took it that a little bit further. All the stuff you did that was a callback to Ocarina of Time, finding the Master Sword, finding the Temple of Time, and all going underneath the ocean, and all those callbacks to Ocarina of Time, fantastic. But the reason I like Skyward Sword for the ideas a lot of people forgot about. However, Wind Waker, I would say it's worse than Skyward Swords for all those parts that people often forget to criticise Wind Waker about. The first dungeon you do is a stealth mission. That was a mistake. It's not fun. If you've played it before, you might like it, but it's not a fun dungeon the first time you play that game. Any of the first kind of dungeons you have in any other Zelda game, it kind of sets the pace of saying this is the Zelda game you'll be playing. Wind Waker almost says this is going to be the Zelda game you're going to be playing, but that's the only dungeon that's like it. Everything else is nothing like that first dungeon, so you should have saved it till later and did something else first to sort of say this is the game you'll be playing. So you're already upset, if you are, I wasn't, about the graphics. Then you play that dungeon, I can see why you would give this a lot of problems, you know. Then the game opens up and people don't like the navigate. You've just gone from riding around on a horse in Hyrule Field to now you have to change the wind to be able to go anywhere you want. I, again, didn't have a problem with that, especially because I found the teleport frog hurricane things very quickly, so navigating that map wasn't a problem for me. And I could just point myself in one direction and go, whereas when I was playing Link to the Past, I had to physically play the game to be able to navigate the map. I was perfectly fine just to set myself in one direction and see what I came across, because I didn't need to mindlessly dodge around hedges and whatever, so I didn't mind that so much. But the game does slow down towards the end and then ramps up for that final boss. The last reason I think Wind Waker is worse than Skyward Sword is the last boss is far, far too easy. Far too easy. It's an awesome build-up. Puppet Ganon, the last temple, the water around you when you battle Ganon, 5-6 hits, then it goes into a cutscene and you finish him off. So bad, and there's no way of making it harder. Even the HD version doesn't make it harder. If they just made that more difficult, it would be better. Oh god, do these games need a remake? Out of all of the Zelda games, these are the ones that need the remake. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. Better than Link Between Worlds, is it? Is it, Billy? Because they're old. This is a tough one. I want them to remake this in the same vein as Link's Awakening. Okay, we're getting quite heavy at the top there. I might have to move something else up to double S tier. Let's talk about Link's Awakening first, because that note goes in nicely to Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Link's Awakening is brilliant. I had so much fun playing that game because it had Link's Awakening, the original one, was good back in the day, but it had aged badly. What they did with the Nintendo Switch one made it look gorgeous. They kept everything that game really liked and they added more content to it. Some may argue the content's unnecessary, but every time I was playing this game, I was constantly thinking about Minish Cap, and it just reminded me how good Minish Cap was. And it was in the same vein as that, and I thought, oh my god, they're geniuses. They're going to use the same engine to remake Minish Cap, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, and I will lap it up. It will be so good. And then we didn't hear anything, and I was like, why? It's like a layup, Nintendo. The money's on the table. Just please do it. Just put Oracle of Ages and Seasons and maybe the other one that Capcom never had a chance to finish, the green cased one, and make it in this game style, please. It would be so good. But I loved Link's Awakening. Did I enjoy it more than Wind Waker? God, this is hard. Hey, Deadeye, now Link Between Worlds is higher than Oracle games as much as I love them both. You're probably right, Deadeye, because of just how old those games are, and I'm going to remember them quite fondly because I played them quite, you know, I love the fact that they came together. For people who don't know, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons was a project they lent out to Capcom. I think it was Capcom. Pretty sure it was Capcom. And the idea was that they were going to use the whole Pokemon thing, where you could buy both games and you could transport information across it. There were going to be free games. There was going to be a green one as well. But they ran out of time and they decided to put a lot of the ideas in it. Oracle of Seasons was more combat heavy. So everything was about big bosses and dungeons with loads of enemy swarms and things like that. Oracle of Ages was more puzzle heavy. So there was a lot more item management and the dungeons were more puzzles and a lot less battle. And what you did is if you played Oracle of Ages, then you got I think it was a password at the end of that game, and if you put that into Oracle of Seasons when you first play it, it continues your story. And at the end of that you get a special dungeon to say you've done Ages, you've done Seasons, here's your end dungeons. It sort of brings the story together. Then if you do it the other way around and you play Oracle of Seasons first and then play Ages, it gives you a different ending. Is it better than Wind Waker though? I'm potentially saying this right now. Tell me I'm wrong, people. What do you think? Is Link's Awakening... Was I just caught up on the fact that I played Breath of the Wild and I wanted a more traditional Zelda game, and then they gave me Link's Awakening and suddenly I was just like, yes, this is the game I want instead? Or did you feel the same? Link's Awakening is that good? It was quite fun. The mini game they put in there, where you had to have a certain setup of dungeons to be able to put things together to get that damn piece stuff, wasn't worth it because I think all you got was a heart piece. Can't remember, but that's the point. You didn't get anything worthwhile at the end of it all. The actual mini game of it, once you actually got into it, I thought was quite fun. I really like Link's Awakening. I'm going to have to stick it there until someone says to me, you know, something about Skyward Sword or Wind Waker I've forgotten. Again, it doesn't matter how short it is, in my opinion, for the same reason Minish Cap isn't. It's a fun game start to finish. There's nothing in that game that made me go, this is horrible, except for maybe the raft. There's a raft water level which was a bit annoying, not so much the second time, but the first time I played it, where you had to pay to go down this raft to get these items, and I was after a heart piece and I couldn't work out where I needed to go, and you needed to use the hook shot to pull you away from the current. That was probably the only bit where I actually went, God, this is annoying. But compared to Skyward Sword and Wind Waker, where there's a lot more of those moments, that's why I'm saying it's better from start to finish. Because I disagree with people who rank games higher based on their length, especially when they're just grinding the timer out. When you have to grind in Final Fantasy just to beat that boss, and they add like 10 hours onto it as a result, that's not fun for me, and you lose marks for me. I don't look at that clock and go, God, this game is massive, it's epic. I look at that clock and go, oh my God, I just wasted 10 hours of my life because the game developers didn't make an extra level, and I just had to walk backwards and forwards in the same area until I got a high enough level. Lisa says, I've never played Four Swords, but seriously, is any Zelda game worse than Phantom Hourglass? Yes. Four Swords I think is, but no one's told me otherwise and disagreed with me, so maybe that's where it is. Oracle Ages and Seasons could be up here if they remade it in the same vein as Link's Awakening. However, because it looks so dated and because they split these two games up, if you want more action, you've got to play one. If you want more puzzles, you've got to play the other. So by default, Link Between... here we go, see, we're using the old noggin. Link Between Worlds has everything Oracle of Ages and Seasons has in it, but in one game. That's two. This is one game. So as a result of that, Oracle of Ages and Seasons independently, which is the only way we can mark these, not as a pair, are worse than Link Between Worlds. However, if they put the two together and did what they did with Link's Awakening, it would be S tier. Absolutely. Majora's Mask. This is right. So not that Majora's Mask, but this Majora's Mask. We're going past D. We're going past C. A. S. Definitely. Is it in the SS ranks? Is it better than Minish Cap? Is it better than Minish Cap? Yes. Yes, it is. Is it better than Link's Awakening? Yes. Majora's Mask is definitely SS tier. It's not better than Twilight Princess, in my opinion. But, yes, it is definitely up there. I'll tell you why it's up there. It's very different to Ocarina of Time. I don't care what anyone says. I know it reuses assets, but it's a completely different type of game. The dungeons were more complex, but I loved them. I loved the dungeons because I needed a harder challenge after Ocarina of Time, and that's what gave it to me. The masks was such a fantastic addition to it. That town, the clock town in the middle, was better than most full games were. When you were playing those mini missions and going through your Bomber's Bible, I don't think it was called a Bible, was it? Bomber's Notebook. That game alone, just doing everything in that notebook, was better than some AAA games that I was playing without anything else. I loved every aspect of that. Finding out when people were going to come, working out what puzzles I needed to do and what I needed to do first. How I had to be at certain places at different times. That whole mission, which went from the very first hour of the morning of day one right up till when the moon was about to crash into it and you're there at the wedding. Phenomenal. So good working that out. And I didn't use a guide. I did it all by myself and I loved every minute of it. And people complain about the game because of the time limit, especially in dungeons. I've never understood that. From the moment I first got the first dungeon, with the owl statues, even the original, I'm talking about Majora's Mask 3D here, which is a much better enhanced version. But even in the original, when you got that owl statue and you were able to teleport directly to there on day one, I don't understand why anybody would be doing all the missions to get to the temple and then going straight into the temple without rewinding time first. And that's why you don't like this game. Why would you do that to yourself with only like half a day left? You're trying to do an entire dungeon? Crazy. Don't do that. I also found the slow time song very quickly. So again, that's another reason I really like this game, because I never ever ran out of time. I literally, the first time I played this on the N64, I completed the game. I then booted it up and watched what happened when the moon crashed into the planet, because I never saw it. I never saw it because I literally got it did all the lead up to a temple, got to the owl statue, restarted and rewound time to the first day, slowed time down with the Song of Time, which you could play a certain way, play it backwards, and that slowed time down. I think I found that a mistake. I literally think I played it from memory but did it backwards by mistake, and that's how I found it. Weird. And then you teleport to the statue and you're right at the beginning of the temple with double the amount of time, 3 days to do a temple. Never had a problem with time limit. Never. Mistress Puff, the music, the vibe, the whole Skull Kid thing, the moon, the cuckoos, the mask. Oh, what a setup as well. They hit you right in the heartstrings. You're looking for Navi. You lose your horse. You get turned into a Deku sprout after everything you know that young Link can do. And then there's the other two fairies and the Majora's Mask itself and the happy mask salesman. Oh, what a setup. I love that beginning. Majora's Mask, for something that just reused assets, wow, what a game. The Bomber's Notebook alone makes it better than a lot of other games, not just the other Zelda games, but also the fact that they built such a compelling story out of all of it. I did think the giants looked a bit daft, I have to admit that. Majora's Mask walked so Twilight Princess can run. That is a great saying, and I love that. Majora's Mask walked so Twilight Princess can run. Great. SS tier for Dead-Eye Dre there. Loved it. Ocarina of Time! Well, what a game, huh? What a game. The game that made many people Zelda fans. Especially me. And for so long it was my favourite game of all time. However, I need to brush nostalgia aside and have another difficult conversation about where this will rank. So let's think this over for a time. Number 1, Lisa says. Literally the GOAT of Zeldas. Is it better than Majora's Mask though? Hear me out. At the moment, I'm thinking it should be this way round, right? So Ocarina of Time, not as good as Majora's Mask, because I feel Majora's Mask has aged better. whereas Ocarina of Time has been surpassed, retreaded, and used often as a blueprint in other games and other things. And as much as I'd like to say that she shouldn't mark the game on that, I can't help it. When I go back and play Ocarina of Time, I wish I'm playing Twilight Princess, and I wish I'm playing Majora's Mask, because they're different. They're really, really different. Whereas Ocarina of Time, I think, has been done better in other ways. Take it step by step. Ocarina of Time starts really well in Kakariko Village. You wander around this 3D world, and that was the marvel, wasn't it? Right? Zelda in 3D for the first time. So the whole purpose of that first area is for you to go, wow, it's in 3D, right? But it's slow. Getting the sword and getting the shield is slow, especially if it's your first time. You obviously know where you're going. Not so much. But it is a slow beginning. Then you got the Deku tree, great dungeon, really, really good, right? Yeah, unless you're one of those poor sods that didn't realise you had to jump through the web at the beginning, right? I feel sorry for all of you guys who didn't work that out, because you were running around for ages. But the dungeons, and I think I just seen someone say that. Where is it? Leap Belief. I like the dungeons in it though. Yes, I feel that overall the dungeons are better, but they've redone a lot of the dungeon ideas in other games, right? The story. Let's talk about the story for a bit in Ocarina of Time. You do have sprinkles with the Gorons, the Zoras, and all those sort of aspects and little bits and pieces. But does any of those side stories where you're talking to the Gorons and becoming one of the brothers, and the Zora with the engagement, and the Great Jabu carrying her around in that dungeon, does any of those side missions get anywhere near as good as what you do in Majora's Mask's Clock Town? I don't think so. I think the more connected you are to those characters in Clock Town is much more than what you have in Ocarina of Time. The side quests, getting the different swords, getting the Goron knife, you know, the big sword in Zelda, is literally a trade mission, where you get an item, you give it to someone else, you give it to someone else, you give it to someone else. The best sword in Majora's Mask has got its own storyline. If anyone says to me, what's the first Zelda game you should play Ocarina of Time. Absolutely, the first game you should play. I honestly believe that. However, once you start playing the other ones, you realise it's better. But the Water Temple Ocarina of Time is very complex, and doesn't think I've seen a puzzle dungeon as good, poor boots excluded. In Ocarina of Time 3D, that dungeon is made a lot easier because you can turn on the boots like a normal item, so it's just a button click rather than going in the menu. Plus they colour code the sections of the dungeon, so it's a lot easier. However, that dungeon is nowhere near as hard as what everyone goes on about. The Water Temple, I completed that in a normal, normal Zelda time when I was a kid playing up. I remember telling all my high school mates how to do that dungeon because I got stuck. There was only a fair few, like my absolute closest friends, like Granville, one of my absolute best friends. I didn't have to tell him because he worked it out himself. But there was loads of my high school friends growing up who just didn't understand what to do with that dungeon, and we were just like, you just go here and you do that, it's not that hard. So I think it's the bit in the middle where you kind of have to raise the water level and use the boots to go through the bit in the middle where the spikes are. That's the bit that stuck people, and I didn't get stuck. So the Water Temple is not that hard. Ice Cavern Bill, that's not that bad. Again, I played a little game called Kickle Cubicle, right, which was all about moving ice blocks around not a 3D, but an overhead view, and that prepared me for any block puzzles. It really did. But I do understand why people get frustrated with it. I think it's more kind of like escorting Princess Ruto around in Jabba Jabbu's belly, which is a bit annoying. Having to throw her up to certain sections and that kind of stuff, and if you drop her and she gets hurt, she teleports back. That's annoying. Hang on, you just admitted the dungeons are better, the bosses are better, and then the ending is better, but you still rated Majora's Mask above Ocarina of Time. I don't think the ending is better. I think the last boss is better because it has more stages. You take Ganon on knocking the fireballs back, then you have to run around the collapsing building and take on some extra enemies. Then you take on Big Ganon and have to hit him on the tail. That I think is a better boss than Majora's Mask, which is all these wavy kind of crazy stuff. But you got Oni Link, which makes it really cool. The ending of Majora's Mask I think is better because it shows everybody you helped in Clocktown, and you have an emotional attachment to all of those characters because you helped them out on an emotional level. Because each of those masks they give you is a sign to say you completed something, and you get something extra from each of those masks. So the ending isn't better. Majora's Mask got a better ending, but the last boss is better. What else did you say, Annalise? Because I think you had some valid points. Dungeons are better. Yeah, I'd say the Ocarina of Time dungeons are better because they're more plentiful and they're more varied and more concise. Whereas I think Majora's Mask sometimes had a lot of things patched together. However, thinking about it, I forgot about this. Majora's Mask's bosses on the 3D one are improved, and they have better things. So some of those, actually, the bosses are probably equal now. Although there's less in Majora's Mask, the bosses are a lot more in depth in the 3D version. So not necessarily the bosses are better. There's probably a couple of easy bosses in Ocarina of Time that doesn't need to be there, especially if you work out how to beat them really easily. So do you think Ocarina of Time would be improved with more character development in terms of upgrades? Yes. I think when you did a side quest in Majora's Mask, you got, not only did you get something cool in the new mask that you could use everywhere else in the game, there was also a lot more individuality to the characters rather than going, I'm a crazy postman! Look at the postman as an example. The postman in Ocarina of Time versus the postman in Majora's Mask. In Ocarina of Time, you just have to beat him in a race, and he's always a split second ahead of you. You talk to him, you have to run to Kakariko Village, and he's always beat you there. Or is it the other way around? No, it's on the bridge, isn't it? And you have to beat him there, and he's always beating you by a second, and that's it. That's all he's got. He's always going to beat you. He has 2 lines or whatever. In Majora's Mask, the guy is completely ruled by his schedule, and then when he gets to the final day when the moon's crashing and you find him, he's trembling because he's like, I know nothing else but the schedule says I have to do this, but the moon's coming down and I can't leave it. And he's like in this huge anxiety kind of thing, and it's like, oh my god, this poor guy. And then you get his postman's hat, and he's like, you've saved me, you've lifted this weight off my shoulders. There's nothing like that in Ocarina of Time. I'm happy with this. I think we talked about this a lot. I think we needed to be fair. But I'm happy with the fact that Ocarina of Time is not as good as Majora's Mask. After all these years of arguing backwards and forwards about whether it is or isn't, even within myself, breaking it down with you guys, I honestly think Ocarina of Time is not as good as Majora's Mask, but only by a hair. And we are splitting hairs to be able to make that division. Both of these games are phenomenal, but Majora's Mask is better. That's it. That's the final bullet. Fanata, you've just put it right there. When you jump in Majora's Mask, you do flips. You don't do that in Ocarina of Time. That's why Majora's Mask is better. But Link's Awakening, I thought, was a nice, precise, handheld Zelda done right, and I think that is the in-between mark. You've got a lot of games, but a lot better than Link's Awakening. But Link's Awakening for me is the middle point of when Zelda was at its best for those 2D games. That's the benchmark of average. If you're going to have to choose an average, I think Link's Awakening is going to be it. I think I like Zelda 2 because my friend Wayne, I had who got me into Metroid. In fact, he thought Zelda 2 was really good and underappreciated, and he was really good at the game. I think he bought it as a kid, and he got really good at the game, and he showed me how to play it. Once you know how to play it, it's actually a lot better. Once you know where you're going, it's actually a lot more fun. But is it a good Zelda game? Is it better than Four Swords? I think it's bad, but how bad? Is it better than Four Swords? I'm going to say yes. Just because I don't think Four Swords has a point to it. Not for me. Then I says C. So better than Phantom Hourglass. Is it... can we seriously say that Adventures of Link, Zelda 2, is better than Phantom Hourglass? I don't think we can. It had this... It was trying to do something different. it didn't have much of context to be able to tell you what it was want to do. But once you started leveling up and putting items on yourself to make yourself more powerful, especially when you got the down stab, the game's mechanics opened up. When you took on the bigger enemies, when you're sort of attacking high and low and blocking high and low, it's really actually quite fun. Sort of, especially the way my friend used to play it, because he used to get in a sword fight and he used to take it on like a Dragon Ball Z fight, where he's like kind of backwards and forwards. That just really entertained me. So it's probably the nostalgia of it more than anything else. But it has good ideas in there. The temples are terrible because they all look the same. That's the biggest problem with Adventures of Link. And the battle with Dark Link at the end is really epic because there's very little else to compare it to in elsewhere in the game. It's not better than Phantom Hourglass though, is it? Phantom Hourglass, let's be fair, is annoying because of that one dungeon. There's loads of good ideas in that game. Adventures of Link is not as good as Phantom Hourglass. It's easy to hate on Phantom Hourglass because it could have been so much better, couldn't it? Phantom Hourglass could have been really good, and to be honest, I think we might get to a point where I'm doing this with Phantom Hourglass. Because it has some great ideas, and when it's good, it's very good. But there's just so many parts that just make you go, I don't want to play this game anymore. However, Adventures of Link does have that from the moment you press the go button. If you're not willing to get used to the battle system, you will never get past the first dungeon. You don't have that with Phantom Hourglass. The original Legend of Zelda. We're going past the D's. We're going into the C's. This is going to throw things out of proportion, and this is going to be the most annoying thing to me. I love this game, and I want to actually put it here, but I know that's not correct. And I'll tell you why I want to put it there, because I still think this game is incredibly fun, and it's the first Zelda game I ever played, and I think this is a theory I have about why people feel this game is aged badly. When you bought it, like I did when I had it, I borrowed it from my neighbour, Lee, and he actually bought it, and it came with a map and instructions. And when you have that map and instructions, the whole game is so much better. It's so much more fun. You lay the map on the floor, and you play through this game, and this map gives you clues of where you've got to go. That's how this game should be played. Anybody who plays it nowadays doesn't have that, and I think Nintendo forgets that's a key part of enjoying this game. So when you're going trying to figure out where to go next and what to do and all that kind of stuff and how to beat the enemies and that, you're missing all the clues because it is actually in the instruction manual with the map. And I think that aspect of having a map and playing through it with the instruction manual made it a better game and made it feel like you've stumbled across this legendary quest. And that's what makes it better for me. But I understand that's nostalgia. So we need to get this right, because this needs to move down, doesn't it? I have to be honest with myself. Put it below Link Between Worlds, but above Oracles. And a game shouldn't be dependent on a map or extra stuff, though. Yeah, this is what I'm saying, did I? I do think this game is a lot better than what people think, because I think people play it now and go, what's the point? I don't get it. You know, it's an old game. We've obviously moved forward from there. But there's something about the way that I played that game that it has very fond memories, and I do enjoy playing it and blasting through it in a couple of hours. I haven't done it for a while, actually. I should really do that again soon. But let's be serious. As fun as I find this game because of its nostalgia, I need to be honest. Link Between Worlds is a better game. And this is where I start thinking I need to do this. I don't want to raise Link Between Worlds into A because I didn't like it that much. I want to do that. I know you're going to hate me, Deadeye, but I want to do that. Oracle of Ages and Seasons. You can get straight into The Legend of Zelda, though. And it's so iconic. Some of the, you know, all the t-shirts and all the sprites and everything. And the items and the way you use them. God, I'm gonna lose people. I'll tell you why I'm having a problem with this. Like Pac-Man is the most simplistic idea ever, and when you're trying to compare Pac-Man to the game of the year, Last of Us 2, right? Is Pac-Man more fun than Last of Us 2? How hard is that? because they're completely different aspects. But Pac-Man as a concept is so much replay value and enjoyment to come back and play that. That's how I see The Legend of Zelda. And like I said with Link's Awakening, where that would be the middle tier of it, The Legend of Zelda has that. And it's so much fun just to play that over and over again like a Pac-Man game. Whereas Link Between Worlds, you have to put yourself in the story. And I think sometimes the story gets in the way of the experience. And if you took the story out of Link Between Worlds, would it still be good? Yes, because of the dungeons. And the mechanics are quite good. So that... it's hard! I thought the Master Quest was stupid. Because I had to shoot a cow in the bum to open a doorway. And I was like, this is dumb. This is really dumb. And the cow was like... I'm not building the picture here. The cow was actually head first stuck inside Jabu Jabu's belly, so only its bum was sticking out of the actual wall, and I had to shoot it with a hook shot, or no, not a hook shot, a slingshot to open a door. After that, I thought this game was stupid. It's just that one dungeon. The other ones are not so bad, but that's what Master Quest is. But it is part of Ocarina of Time 3D, so you get that in there anyway. But regardless, with that New Game Plus and Master's Quest, it's still not as good as Majora's Mask. Sorry, don't care. It's hilarious, Kizra says. It was stupid. It was really stupid. Hyrule Warriors. I loved Hyrule Warriors. We're going up, we're going up. Better than Link Wood, better than the original Zelda, better than Link's Awakening, better than Four Swords. Is it better than Wind Waker? No. Hyrule Warriors was a love letter to the Zelda series. Yes, it was repetitive. Yes, the extra content was more of the same, and you were just hacking and slashing everything. But Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition was a blast. All the characters that you can unlock and play as, and sometimes for the first time, bringing back all these old characters to sort of see all their moves and trademark moves. All the bosses and the bad guys and everything else, loads of enemies on screen at once, and I'm classing this as the Wii U version with all the DLC. I know it's the Definitive Edition is the one that's on the DS, and they didn't have quite so many enemies, but I played a lot of this two-player cooperative with my wife and really enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed it on my own. And whenever they added a new DLC character, I loved picking it up. I thought it was really, really good, and the music was really, really good. It was just a switch your brain off and enjoy Zelda kind of game, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm surprised it's above Link's Awakening for you, only because Link's Awakening Nintendo Switch came out, and that made Link's Awakening DS less. I probably shouldn't put Link's Awakening DX on the list. It's only just because it's got a different control scheme that's kind of there. I think really that should be here. I should move that down, because it doesn't need to be there, because that I would never go back and play DX again because Link's Awakening Nintendo Switch exists. Right, Age of Calamity, I didn't like it for now. I didn't like it for the same reasons that we'll get on to Breath of the Wild soon. But for the same reasons, Link Between Worlds will never be elevated higher, because it constantly calls back to a game in the Zelda series I didn't really enjoy. Age of Calamity did the same. I liked Age of Calamity a lot. I would probably say it is a B, but it disappointed me no end because of what they decided to do with the storyline, first and foremost. So the ending of Age of Calamity. What should we use for Age of Calamity? Let's just put normal Hyrule Warriors in there just to talk about it for now. So I put Age of Calamity here. Yeah, let's be real, Billy. Yeah, Age of Calamity would go there because I did have a fun time playing through it. I didn't like what they decided to do with the end story. Instead of making it tie into Breath of the Wild completely, they kind of did something different. Maybe Breath of the Wild 2 will make it make sense. But I really wanted it to end to make me want to play Breath of the Wild. Instead, it ended in its own way, and you don't even have to touch Breath of the Wild if you didn't want to. It ended with a pretty bow. That was a big sour point for me. And playing all the extra missions that Age of Calamity had was not worth it. Whereas Hyrule Warriors, you could play with a different character to get more stuff for that one character, and it made it more sense. And I know you could do it in Age of Calamity as well, but it was less so. I did like what they did with Age of Calamity with the map, making it all on one screen. Whereas Hyrule Warriors, you didn't have that. But Age of Calamity, I think it was doing so well. Then it kind of got to this point where it's like, that's all we've got. And I was like, oh, well, I've got another 20, 30 hours to play and just to do the story. And yeah, that's all we got. We ain't got nothing else. You'll have to just do it over and over again. Okay. Then you got to the end and just did that. Because, oh, we're out of ideas now, so you might as well just play the game. There's nothing really to earn. Maybe the DLC will do something for it. But I didn't get that with Hyrule Warriors. So that's it. I'm not going to put it on there because that's not the right game. But that's Age of Calamity for me. Candice of Hyrule. That's not where it's going. It's just where I'm thinking. I played this a little bit. And it's not really a Zelda game, is it? It's not really a Zelda. It's a themed game in the way that Donkey Konga is not a Donkey Kong game. There's another list I could do. Donkey Konga is not a Donkey Kong game, but it's in this franchise. Candice of Hyrule. I could see what it was. Candice, is that how you pronounce it? Cadence. Thank you for that. It's much a Zelda game as Hyrule Warriors. I disagree, because Hyrule Warriors basically takes aspects of the battle system from Zelda, but puts Dynasty Warriors over the top of it. Whereas Cadence of Hyrule is a rhythm-based game. It's not really the same genre at all. Even though it looks like it, it's not. You know, like another rhythm-based game, what was it called? There's a Final Fantasy game on DS, which was a rhythm-based game. Again, really good, a lot of fun. But it's a rhythm-based game with RPG elements added to it from Final Fantasy, not anything else. This is a rhythm-based game with Zelda slapped on the top. Whereas Hyrule Warriors, I think there's a lot more. There's a lot more to the battle system that's similar, you know, using the items and the boss battles and how you beat them and stuff like that. I didn't like it. I just couldn't get into it. And I didn't like the way I had to sort of play the game to the beat. And I know people say if you give it more time it's really, really good, but I didn't like it. I'm going to put it there. No, I'm not. I did play it enough. I didn't like it at all. It's the one Zelda game I just couldn't get into, because it's not, for me, it's not a Zelda game. It's a Zelda themed game. I didn't like it at all. So I said I was doing everything. My Nintendo Picross Twilight Princess. I have actually got this too. Never got this. You're not missing much, to be honest. It's actually really fun. So it is better than Candice of Hyrule. Is it better than Four Swords? Yes. I don't care. I don't like Four Swords. This is not a Zelda game, but it is better than Four Swords. Is it better than The Adventures of Link? It's more fun. Yes, I do think it is. Unsubscribe immediately. Really addictive, in the same way that a word search is addictive. Minesweeper. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's very much like Minesweeper. Absolutely, it's basically Minesweeper. Now, you might say, how on earth are you possibly being serious here, Billy? But tell me, how if you've played Zelda 2, have you played more hours of Minesweeper or more hours of Zelda 2? Come at me. You can't argue. You guaranteed you played more Minesweeper than you have played Zelda 2. You have to. Go. Did I play more Minesweeper than Phantom Hourglass? Yeah. Did I enjoy Minesweeper more than Phantom Hourglass? In the Zelda list, I think the joke has to end here. I think it's a fun game to have, and it is really addictive. But in a Zelda tier list, it's not going any higher than that. I do think it's more fun than Zelda 2. No, go further with this joke. Link's crossbow training. I like this, and it was only 20 quid. I think people forget about that. It was released with the crossbow attachment on the Wii, and it was only 20 quid. I love light gun games, and they should really bring them back. And they started on the Wii. Maybe they didn't sell very well, but they started on the Wii with the Resident Evil ones, and this. They did some House of the Deads, but they didn't do Virtual Cop, and I really wish they did. They didn't do House of the Dead 1. Why? You did House of the Dead 2 and 3 on a disc, and you just put 1? Sega! I ain't got time for you tonight. I ain't got time for you. The problem with it is, it needed like online leaderboards. Or ways to sort of to compare scores, like a pinball game with your mates. I enjoyed it more than Candace of Hyrule. Definitely more than Four Swords. Better than Adventures of Link and Picross. Would I play it more than Phantom Hourglass? Yes, I think I would. Link to the Past. Is it? Whoa, here we go. Right, is Link's crossbow training better than A Link to the Past? This is where the viewers just off and everyone switches off for the night. I love pinball games and like light gun games. This had a lot more content in it than most light gun games did. That I enjoyed, like Virtual Cop, like House of the Dead. It's actually a really good light gun game. It just wasn't a good Zelda game for content, was it? Do a show called Personal Best. I will do Link's crossbow training on Personal Best one day. What I'd like to do, if anyone's still got the game, is set me a target. Send me a screenshot of your best score and let me see if I can beat it. Because that's the kind of stuff I need in this game. I need someone to set me a high score, a challenge, and go after it. Because I was the only one playing it, I beat my scores, did all this challenges, and that was kind of over and done with. But I loved it. I thought it was really good. Yeah, let's be real. I would much rather play Oracle of Ages and Seasons and see everything that game has to offer than play Link's crossbow training over and over again. I don't like Link to the Past, but it is a bit. I mean, let's not be stupid. Let's put it there. That's where it needs to be. Right, the big one. Breath of the Wild. Here we go. I don't like Breath of the Wild. I don't like Breath of the Wild. Let's decide where it's going to go first. Let's decide where it's going to go first. It is better than all those. It's better than that. Better than Phantom Hourglass. Better than those. Right, I'm there at the moment. I might move it up higher as we talk, but that's where I'm at the moment. And let me talk about Breath of the Wild, because everyone, if you've people are not happy. People are not happy already. Let me explain Breath of the Wild. For now, thinking about it earlier today, when I first played Breath of the Wild, I was ready to declare it my fave game. I had a good time, but after rationalising my favourite games a few years ago, I found that I wasn't really feeling it. It's not an A game I have any want to replay at all. Unlike all the other Zeldas, it's too large and only really has moment-to-moment novelty on its side. That's a good in-depth analysis where we currently are. Unless you really dislike it, by your own reasoning, it feels like it would be an A. Let me go through why what the biggest issues with Breath of the Wild. On the surface of Breath of the Wild, from my first moments playing that game, when everybody else walked out onto the Great Plateau and everyone talks very highly about that moment, I looked at it and I went, I've missed everything. I've got to this point in the game, I literally just turned it on, and I feel that I have missed all the action. I wanted Age of Calamity in Breath of the Wild. I wanted to have Breath of the Wild's map, but Age of Calamity's storyline. I wanted to be there when it all went down. I would have happily played the game through Breath of the Wild style and end with Link losing. That was a more interesting game for me. I felt that I'd played Ocarina of Time, but I started as an adult and missed all of that old stuff. All the stuff of him growing up. What would Ocarina of Time be without you being a kid first and then growing into the world? Such a big chunk of it, and that's what I felt was Breath of the Wild. I felt with all those flashbacks that you did with Zelda, I'd missed the first half of the game. So I felt I got there too late. That set the tone for me immediately. I immediately went, oh god, God, I've just missed everything. Everything's kind of this world is very where everyone else went. Oh my God, look at the size of the world. There's so much to do. I looked at it and went, it's empty. There's nothing going on, and everything's left. Then I started playing the game, and I started going, okay, this is not the Zelda game I was expecting. This is very different. So I started playing the game. You can climb everything. Okay, cool. You have a lot more scope. You basically, you see that mountain, you can climb it. You see that valley, you can go down there. Get all that. That's great. But coming from what I've already said about open world games, I like to know where I'm going and where the right direction is. Because if I work a full-time job, if I sit down with Breath of the Wild, I don't think, oh, this is my release, I can just goof around on Breath of the Wild for a couple of hours and that's it. I play too many games. I need to play a game where I go right, I've got 2 hours, I'm going to do a dungeon, turn it off, and I know I'm getting closer to the end. And I want to get to the end because I've got hundreds of other games on the shelf I want to play and experience. Not spend 2 hours in Breath of the Wild just wandering around picking up random stuff, you know? There was never necessarily a set task. Yes, you could do all 4 dungeons, and that's exactly how I played it. I did all 4 dungeons, had a little bit of an explore, but the part where everyone speaks highly of, where you can just go randomly and just find an adventure, for me, I just thought it was a waste of time. I was just wasting my time. I'd much rather play Doom Eternal, level to level, and know I can get through 3 good stages of Doom Eternal and have a blast, then wander aimlessly across a load of fields in Breath of the Wild and look at the clock and gone, oh, 2 hours have gone and I've done nothing. I've progressed nowhere. But you know, if you don't buy games like I buy games, I pretty much buy everything. If this is the one game you bought for the year, I understand why you would like it. I get that. That's my problem with open world. I don't like I'm going to bring up Assassin's Creed again. Assassin's Creed is a checklist. Yeah, getting the flags, getting the feathers. Yeah, you got your hits and your story, but everything else that makes that game as big as it is, rather than a 20-hour experience, is about exploring every inch of this open world map and just ticking off a checklist. I don't actually feel like I'm doing anything but going shopping in that game. You know, just sightseeing and clicking on a button. Go here, press a button. Go there, press a button. Same with Grand Theft Auto and those sort of games. Go drive across the massive map, get to a mission. He then tells you to go on the other side of the map, complete a mission, which might be shoot a few dudes, then go back and claim the prize. That's Grand Theft Auto for me. I know it's not how you're supposed to play it. You're supposed to play it in a way that you go, you know, you might set off the police and the police come after you, or you. It's the part of sandbox games where it's more. I find them more like screensavers. So let's try and explain that. You have a sandbox with all these mechanics in this world, and you can do all this random stuff. Great, okay. Does it do anything for the gameplay? No. It's just something you can do. Someone has programmed something, and you're happy that you can press a few buttons and you can see it happen. You know, you can kick a chicken miles or play golf. Cool, that's fine. But it doesn't. It's the gameplay. Gameplay will always be top for me. And if it doesn't push the gameplay, then it doesn't mean anything. I don't care. I don't care what your screensaver is going to show or what I can't do in real life I'm doing here. So open world games are that. Just all these mechanics, if it doesn't enhance the gameplay, the battle system, the level design or anything like that, it's just a feature. Like from the very first moment that people showed me Grand Theft Auto 3, where you could pull a guy out of a car and drive a car, I was like, you know, I could just buy a driving game and drive a car. Yeah, but you can get out of the car and walk around. So how does that make anything like gameplay-wise better? In fact, it's more annoying because I have to find a car I can steal first rather than just press a button and get in a car. I think a lot of people agree, Deadeye, it's a relaxing game. But for me, I want to, when I sit down to play a game, I want to know that I've enjoyed my time with it and I've made some progress into finishing it. And that's why I like Link's Awakening, because every time I played that game I was progressing in something, I achieved something. With Breath of the Wild and games like in that, I feel that I've sat down and I could have got the same experience by watching a meditation video. where I'm just wandering around a screensaver and like, oh, that's pretty cool. If I shoot, you know, what's that? Oh yeah, if I get one of those, they octa rocks that kind of inflated. If I attach that to a raft, it flies up in the air. That's funny, isn't it? Or if I cut a tree down and hit it with the mechanic, and then fly through the air. Great. Yeah, look at these. Look at these. The way the trees move, and I can chop a tree down. Cool. But what exactly does that do for the game? It's just. In every other game, when you try and cut a tree down, it doesn't do anything. You do it on this game, oh look, it falls over like a tree. Yeah, but it doesn't do anything with the game. It doesn't actually change it. The physics stuff was fun. Yeah, I think a lot of people enjoyed it, but for me, I don't care about physics engine. If you just give me a physics engine and just say, look what you can do, I don't play games for that. I'd much rather have a game where you can go from level to level to level, like Mario, Donkey Kong Country, anything like that, than I would have a massive map that just says, go on, press buttons until you eventually find something we want you to do. So yeah. I then get to the point where the mechanics and the physics start getting in the way of my enjoyment of the game. Kizra said rain. That's the biggest and most obvious one. When you can climb everything, and the whole game is based around the fact that you can climb and access different areas, then why the hell would you make it rain so you can't climb stuff? And there were so many times where I jumped down into a valley and needed to get back up to where I was to continue the story, but it was raining. So I had to wait until the rain stopped. Hated it. I was like, you're stopping me playing the game. Why? Because it's raining. Other people played it and said, oh, it's relaxing. I did some cooking and that kind of stuff. Yeah, not me. You closed off the game. It's like someone pressed pause and made me play a different game for a while when I wanted to get back to my Zelda game. Assassin's Creed has those invisible walls that close off things and the desynchronization and stuff, so you can't go where you want to go. But what I didn't like is that I could go in the wrong direction for 2 hours and never even realise. And then I wasted 2 hours, you know. Other people saw giant dragons flying around and went, oh my god, what's that? I looked alone. That's a distraction. I'm trying to get to a temple, and that's a distraction. So let's move on to the other part. Zelda for me, as you may look from this, there's a lot of similarities to the top of Zelda games. I love getting items and how that adds more to what I can do in the world, how I interact with things. So like when you get the hook shot and you can now hook onto anything wooden and it drags you to new areas to get new heart containers. The capturing things in bottles. The spinner where you get in Twilight Princess when you can lock into a lot of the other worlds, and that opened up that whole temple and what you could do with it. Oh god, what else have we got? Just the Deku leaf flying over stuff, how that would now made a lot of the platform sections really easy because you could fly and glide over things. So good. The Minish Cap with the blow jar and like finding more rupees and things in hidden locations. All of those items, they added stuff more to the world so you could actually use them in every location. What did they do in Breath of the Wild? They chose 4. They chose 4 of the Sheikah Slate mechanics and gave it to you from the very start because they knew that you would need all of these to be able to access this map, otherwise you could get terribly, terribly stuck. And they never gave you anything else to collect and experiment with. There was no new items apart from those 4. I miss getting a new item and wondering what it can do and seeing what it does to my arsenal. And they took that away from me in Breath of the Wild. That was another. The Sheikah Slate mechanic. I thought it looked clumsy. I thought it looked ugly with the globules and things. And it never gave me anything new to learn, and that's what I like about Zelda, getting a new item and learning how to use it. I suppose when you look at it as you're doing the temples, then yeah, I can see how you wouldn't like it too much. Yeah, so the temples is the other part. I love doing the temples. I love getting to the temples. I love looking, in the same way I love Tomb Raider, going into a temple for the first time, looking around and going, man, how am I going to solve this puzzle? You know, how am I going to get to the end of this puzzle? Where do I start? What do I do? If I pull this lever, what happens? If I go through this door and pick this key item up, is that going to open this lock? Or when I get loads of keys and I have to open loads of locked doors and treasure chests, what's going to happen? Like jumping through the web in the first Zelda game, awesome. You know, just figure out, where do I need to go? Oh, there's a web down there. If I jump on it, what's going to happen? When you first jump and it bounces, you go, I need more height. So you go higher and then jump down. I love that in Zelda games, where they and Twilight Princess was the precipice for that. It was the absolute best, because every time you went into a dungeon, it was like going into a giant grandfather's clock with all these moving parts, and when you moved one part, something else changed and something else moved, and everything interlocked so well. And I did feel like I was like look at a Rubik's cube, constantly moving pieces around, and it was really difficult to begin with. But then I got a new item that made it easier. So then I was like, oh, okay, there's a clue. And eventually, when you completed that, I always sum it up with a part in Tomb Raider. There's a dungeon in Tomb Raider 1 Anniversary where the whole object of it is to climb out at the top, and it takes you ages, and it's really dangerous to climb at the top, and you could fall any time and die. Then when you get to the top, you're like, oh my god, thank you, I'm so happy, oh, I got out of there. And you look up and there's another temple to climb. You literally get out and there's another temple waiting for you, and at first you go, oh, I can't believe it, this is terrible. And then when you start solving that next puzzle, it's like, no, come on, we can do this. And I love that feeling of trying to solve somebody else's mystery or someone else's temple, and that's what I get with Zelda. With Breath of the Wild, what did they do? They took each one individual puzzle that they came up with, a block puzzle, physics puzzle, you know, whatever they decide to do, and they separated it into loads and loads of those different dungeons. What are they? 260? I think there might be less. I don't know how many there are. Let's just say there's 260 until someone corrects me. 260 dungeons. Split them up across all these different temples that you have to find them and locate them with a hot cold mini game. Go into it, solve one puzzle, get a slight upgrade to your life or grip meter so you can do other stuff easier. And it kind of drip feeds this kind of, you know, that mechanic that's really annoying that you keep falling off. If you keep doing temples, we'll make it a little easier for you. Ugh. You do one temple, you do one puzzle, you leave. That's it. Hated it. I hated it. There's no nuance. There was no complication. There was no imagination. It just did nothing fitted into one another. That's another reason I didn't like Breath of the Wild. I love the idea in Breath of the Wild where you can go straight to the last boss, but it's a lot harder, so you do everything else to make that last boss easier. I think that's a good concept. But if the only two things you can do to make the game easier is make it you hang on more and have more health, just chuck the mechanics from Ocarina of Time, Minish Cap, Link's Awakening, Twilight Princess into Breath of the Wild and give me more items to beat Ganon. Make him. You can beat him with a sword on its own, but I needed all these other items that I could potentially use instead to make Ganon easier. Not just make it so I got more life. That's lame. 120. Okay, so it wasn't as bad as I thought. 120 shrines, aren't they? They're shrines. So I often get the argument, well, that's what they did, Billy. You had the four big temples, the shrine things. I love the champions. I think they're great, and I loved them in Age of Calamity. Playing them was awesome. And there was little bits of story in there. Great, loved it. Then you go actually into the big shrines, the big temples, whatever they call the guardians, and all the guardians look the same. I know people always say to me, you're bored. Fire temple, grass temple, water temple, it's always the same things over and over again. You want more of the same. Well, not necessarily, but what I don't want is 4 of the exact same temple that looks the same. Give me something different to look at, surely. So they all look the same, and even the bosses look very similar. And I get a lot of criticism from my friends on this. The bosses weren't different enough for me. So even when I get to the part I really like, I just don't think they were inventive enough with the temples. The Divine Beasts, however, they weren't big enough to hold up the candle of what is a dungeon. Yeah, that I felt the same. Also, the final boss mechanic is busted. The more you play and the more skilled you get, the easier the boss gets. Finishing all the dungeons cuts boss HP in half. Yeah, I think that's a good mechanic, but I think instead of just reducing a bar, because that's essentially what you're doing. You've got a life bar and you just make it bigger or smaller. Instead of doing that, what they should have done is they should have given you Zelda items that you could use instead of the sword to beat Calamity Ganon. And you know, when Calamity Ganon's flying through the air, maybe you could use the hook shot Whereas without it, you have to make him land. That is the kind of imagination I was hoping for. Who'd be down for Breath of the Wild 2 having no climbing? I think it would look less goofy. There's several aspects of Breath of the Wild where I was climbing and stuff, and I just thought, this looks dumb. This looks daft. I'd much rather you just make a better map so I don't need to worry about where I'm climbing. It annoyed me when the lightning happened and you had to oh god, it's a lightning storm. Dequip all of my weapons. Oh, and I haven't even spoken about when items break. Like the smallest puzzle in the world. Get to the chest, I get a weapon. Great. I literally used the weapon 3 or 4 times and it breaks. So not only did I waste 20 minutes trying to figure out how to get there, 5 minutes on the puzzle when I got there and didn't think it was good anyway, the reward was useless. And I found that constantly with Breath of the Wild. Where Twilight Princess, when I got a reward, it was an item I could use for the rest of the game, and it changes the gameplay up. I got an item that broke in 5 or 6 swings, so what was the point? I did all 4 temples, and I was on the way to Ganon's castle. And I walked all the way around Ganon's castle to assess the best way to do it. And I noticed this one waterfall. And I'd built my green bar up enough to kind of cheese it, because not only did the green bar get to a point where, yeah, you could fill it up and you could hang on, but didn't you find there was parts where you could just sort of clip into the wall, let go of grip, and then you get your bar back and you climb up again? I found that constantly. I just kept cheesing the mechanic. I just kept climbing stuff and going, okay, well I can pause here, get my green bar back and just climb again. You go around and you have to do all those boss battles until you eventually get to Ganon. I didn't realise that was even there, because I looked up and I went, I need to get to the top of that castle. How am I going to do it in the fastest possible time? So I went to this waterfall and I climbed directly up. And I kept climbing, and every so often I'd pause to take a break, get my health back and climb straight up again. I didn't even realise this was a temple. Like I said, I didn't realise that. I got to the very top of it and went straight to Ganon and missed out that entire battle. It was only later that someone told me that that was actually a temple. Didn't even realise that was even a temple or something you could do. And I was so annoyed that it ruined the last, like, ascent to Ganon's castle, because I literally went, what's the fastest way there? Because that's basically what the game's telling me to do. I need to get there. How do I get there? Well, this is the most logical and quickest way. Got there and I completely missed a huge chunk of the game as a result. It's not a Zelda game for me. It was a Zelda game for people who liked those open world games. All the bits of Zelda that people got annoyed with, or either fed up with because they played too many games like it, whether they wanted an open world like the original Legends of Zelda, where they could move around and play the game in any order they see fit, where they didn't want the same items, they just wanted to explore. That was the Zelda game they gave them. And after Skyward Sword, which was the last one I enjoyed, I knew Breath of the Wild wasn't for me. Everybody else loves that game, and I absolutely see why. But for me, who's ranked all these games you see here, and you can see the ones I'm putting on top, they're the most linear of all the game's experiences, and I loved the way that they did and tested me the way they did. As soon as you'll notice as you go further down the list, the ones that make it more obscure and get in the way of you actually getting to the end and beating Ganon or saving the Triforce, saving the princess, whatever, the lower it gets. And I agree with what people are saying in the chat. I'm pleasantly surprised, in fact, what you're saying, that on hindsight, looking back, a lot of people who said this was their favourite game of all time now are almost echoing what I said when I first played it to begin with. And I think there's some glaring issues with it. Right, let's check the list off. Twilight Princess, absolutely the best Zelda game as far as I am concerned. Majora's Mask, better than Ocarina of Time, only by a hair, but still really good. Minish Cap, better than Link's Awakening. Do you know what? I think I want to do that. I think Link's Awakening might be better than Minish Cap, just because of some of the extra content. And the keystones in Minish Cap are pretty cool, but I think Link's Awakening's minigames are better. Now you don't bump Spirit Tracks up. No, I don't think I can bump Spirit Tracks up. I just loved Link's Awakening so much. I thought it was so fun. I'm gonna leave it as it is. Those two are just as much of a conversation as Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time is, because Minish Cap and Link's Awakening are kind of almost the same argument. Where Minish Cap has an interesting single character with the cap and the Minish, and the interesting mechanic between big and small. Link's Awakening doesn't have all that. It's just a nice playthrough, but it does have some pretty cool mini games. Yeah, you're right, Deadeye. That is the best way to do it. Minish Cap is better than Link's Awakening, but it is very close. Skyward Sword would be. Skyward Sword, I think, is better than Wind Waker, because Wind Waker has huge pace problems. Skyward Sword isn't so much, and I think a lot of people hate on that because of the controls. So the fact that Skyward Sword, honestly think when that HD collection comes back, maybe I will revisit this, and I'm going to save this list and see if it makes any difference. But Skyward Sword is the best Zelda game that's hampered by a poor decision on good mechanics. So I'll lock those in. They're good. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Or should I move? No, Wind Waker is definitely S. If I had to say to someone they have to play Zelda games, it would be these top ones. Yeah, let's leave that. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition is a great time, and if you've played all of these top 7 Zelda games, then at that point I would say, yeah, you play Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. That's fun. You'll get a lot of good experience of that. Four Swords Adventures might be too high. It's a better game than Legend of Zelda because it's kind of like the same game with more stuff in it. Can I honestly say Breath of the Wild is worse than the original Zelda game? I can't say that, really, can I? That's a joke, isn't it? After everything I've said about Breath of the Wild, I would prefer to play the original Zelda than Breath of the Wild, though. Switch Four Swords Adventures with Link Between Worlds. I played... I can't. Four Swords Adventures I played with mates. 4-player Four Swords Adventures is so much better than Link Between Worlds. Legend of Zelda, I would prefer to play that over Breath of the Wild. That's without a doubt. Yeah, Link Between Worlds, Oracle of Ages and Seasons, Crossbow Training. I'm locking that in. That's it. Whew, we did it. That was tough. I thought I did that a lot easier than that. Obviously not.